Brilliant. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's guest to our studio. Personal interest for me, being a huge Wolves fan. So welcome to the show, Ellie Wilson.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
We'll let you tell your story in a moment of your career, but former Lioness, under 19s, under 23s, played for other big clubs, Reading, Sheffield United, London Bees, but currently bossing that right-hand side for Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Try my best, yeah. I'm enjoying it since moving down.
Brilliant. Well, welcome to the show. And let's go back to the start for you before we dig too much into pressure. How did you get into football? And then tell us a bit about your journey to becoming... Reading was your first club, was it?
Yeah, so Reading was where it all started for me. It's where I grew up as well. I was actually I think I had my first game when I was at primary school, bit of a fluke. And that was a one-off. But once I got to secondary school, I sort of had a little bit of involvement in football. I remember a coach at an after-school club that just spotted me randomly. I think it was multi-sports, it wasn't even football, and said, "Who do you play for?" Which sort of took me and mum by surprise. So we then went and found local Reading team. It took me 4 years of just playing casually to get good enough to get into the academy at Reading Football Club, and once I was in, I was absolutely hooked on it. So yeah, I went through from 8 years old to I think I was 16 years old. I got my first team debut at Reading, and yeah, I went from there, moved to Bristol City for 3 years, London Bees, Sheffield United, and as you mentioned, now I'm at Wolves. So yeah, it was a bit of a random one. I don't think there was anything particular that made me want to play other than trying to prove the boys wrong at school, because I was one of the only ones that enjoyed playing. So yeah, just got hooked on it and I've enjoyed it. So
you've made quite a few appearances in the WSL?
Yeah, so just before leaving Reading, we got promoted to the WSL, and I was kind of just touching first team. So when I went to Bristol City, that was my first sort of real season of senior, like women's football, if you like, and we got promoted to the WSL that year. So I had a bit of a stint with them in the spring series and played some big teams and had some good opportunities as well. Really enjoyed those few seasons at Bristol City, and yeah, had some good experience playing as well.
And pulling on the Three Lions as well, that must have been an amazing experience.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was, I think as soon as I got hooked on football, it was always a case of how far can I go with it? What can I try and achieve? And obviously the top is international football. So I remember getting my first call up. I was in the dressing room at college, so at John Valley Academy. Me and one of my teammates, no one knew other than the coaches, sat us down before a game and said, "Just want to congratulate Ellie," and I think it was Chloe as well, for our first call up. So I got my first sort of taster of international football, and yeah, I've had some brilliant playing experiences. I was lucky enough to go away with GB for the World University Games as well, which was a mental experience. Loved that. Very different to England, but yeah, it's stuff you can call upon, and I like to think that it's held me in good stead for future games I've played since those matches and stuff.
Brilliant. And you mentioned university. I also want to ask you about your experience yourself, because you haven't just got an undergraduate degree, have you?
Yeah, I've just finished my master's, which is...
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's I'm glad it's finished, but yeah, it was something that I wanted to do, and there's a big sense of achievement once it's over the line. So I'm glad I sort of persevered with it, and I think it's a good thing to do alongside playing.
Yeah, and perhaps that's a topic we'll delve more into later on for sure, because here at Staffordshire Uni we have student athletes or people who are professional and combine it. So interested to get your thoughts on that in a bit more detail. Away from the pitch though, let's find out a bit more about you. So what kind of things do you enjoy? We know how important downtime is.
Yeah. In
the rare bits of downtime that you do get, judging by how busy you are, what kind of things do you like to do to switch off?
I think the biggest thing I would say is retail therapy. Like, I love going shopping. Yeah, that's just come to me. I think Saturdays or whenever I've got a bit of time, I just want to grab a coffee, go for a walk, wander around the shops. Even if I'm not buying anything, I just like to sort of put my music in and just go for a wander. Maybe put a film on, like if it's an evening. I don't really watch much TV, but I quite like watching a film. Other than that, just going for coffees and catching up with people. Like, just like to chill out when I get a moment.
Yeah, because we hear stories of athletes where they go home and maybe they watch more football, but you like to switch off by completely distancing yourself from the game.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like, I don't watch as much football as you'd probably expect for somebody who plays football. Yeah. If there's, good games on and stuff like that, and of course I watch it, and it's a good learning opportunity as well. But yeah, I just like to chill out, really.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you now about your guilty pleasure, and while you're thinking about your answer, it's probably about time that myself and Katie also gave a little bit here, so I'll quickly give mine.
Yeah.
My guilty pleasure at the moment has been Britney Spears' book. And you're probably not going to expect me to say that, thinking, oh, you know, you're an academic, you're probably reading all really academic stuff. But I just wanted to read something that was really different.
Yeah.
And her story is really quite incredible, the way that she was treated by her family, by the paparazzi. So I found myself putting the kids to bed, and then instead of going back downstairs to like watch telly, go to my own bed because I wanted to get stuck into that book. So I've raced through it, really enjoyed it. My guilty pleasure has been Britney Spears, The Woman in Me.
Nice.
So
once you get hooked on a book though, and
yeah, I know, I got really into it, and I just literally couldn't wait to carry on reading. And
nice.
You might have your preconceived feelings about Britney Spears, but honestly, the story's really, you know, incredible what she's been through.
I'll have to check it out, put it on my to-read list.
Yeah, we should have like a Staffordshire Uni book recommendation
Essential
club.
reading.
Yeah. Essential reading, Britney Spears, The Woman in Me.
Nice.
What about you, Katie?
I wouldn't say mine was a guilty pleasure. I call it a talent.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the students already know this one, so I'll share it with the world. I don't like it, but I'm good at impersonating Lady Gaga.
No way.
So
How do I not know this already?
So I know like the dance routine with Bad Romance, Just Dance, Judas, Telephone, etc.
No way.
I won a talent show once as dressed up as Lady Gaga.
That's
so,
mental, that.
Yeah.
Do you know when you if you join a new team or workforce and they say, right, tell us an interesting fact about yourself, or like two truths and a lie? That is probably the best one I've ever heard.
Yeah, I've used it. Yeah, for two
that's
truths and
good.
a lie.
I always get stuck with that.
Yeah.
How long have I known you? And I don't know this. Is the footage?
Somewhere in the
yeah. No, thanks for sharing. That's
fine.
That's made me smile. What about you, Ellie?
The first one that came to my mind when you said that is going on the topic of films. It's Harry Potter. I'm not going to lie, I do actually love Harry Potter, all of them. I could watch them any time of the year, any time of day. Probably quote all of it. I just love it. And the other one that came to my mind as well, probably in line with like relaxing, is actually playing chess. So I mentioned it to some of the girls the other day. Me and my brothers, like when we were kids, we used to play chess all the time. Like my parents taught us, and I don't know, go through phases of really being into it and then not touching it for ages. But it's actually quite relaxing. So yeah, I've been teaching a couple of the girls how to play chess.
It's a good form of escapism for you, I suppose.
Yeah, I always think, can I be bothered to play chess right now? Like, it is a long game, or can be. But once you're playing, you're not thinking about anything else, and I think that's probably what I quite like about it. You're just solely in that game for that moment of time, and yeah, if you win, even better.
Are you competitive? I mean, you're obviously a really high level athlete, so does that translate into chess?
Yeah, I'm competitive. Yeah. I think it just made me think Xbox is probably something else that I'd occasionally think, I'll go on that and relax a bit, but I'm just so competitive. If I lose, it just gets turned straight off and I'll go do something else.
So even on things like, say, Mario Kart, FIFA?
Yeah, I want to win all the time. I used to love playing Mario Kart. That was always a popular one in the household.
I'm sure next time we do a podcast, we'll have a different guilty pleasure, because like you just said, you pick stuff up, you put stuff down, and things change, don't they? We go through phases.
No, definitely.
So we'll share another one another time. But thinking now, like we've had a bit of a laugh and a joke about our guilty pleasures. A more serious question, I suppose, now. At Staffordshire Uni, a big area of research for us is performing under pressure. Mm-hmm. Different people view that in different ways. How do you see performing under pressure? How would you define that?
I think it's just being able to perform and turn up to the best of your ability in the big moments. So pressure could be an individual game, it could be a certain moment in training, it could be a tournament, which is a lot more wide scale, I suppose, than a specific moment. But just being able to perform at your best and execute what you need to in those moments where you're under the cosh.
So you mentioned whether that's training, whether it's like a regular league game or a tournament, it's just been able to do the best that you can day in, day out, no matter what that event is. Yeah,
I think so. When you're saying performing under pressure, there's obviously some sort of pressures coming from somewhere. So that means there's something at stake, whether that's winning your shirt for a weekend, in terms of training, or whether that's getting 3 points on a weekend in the league, or winning a knockout FA Cup game. whatever it is, tournament football, there's always something at stake, and that's obviously where the element of pressure comes from. So you just need to be able to perform in those moments.
And then keeping on the strand of performing under pressure, would you say you're someone that enjoys being under pressure?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think, I'm sure a lot of athletes probably say this, but I prefer the games where there is more pressure, or you're playing an opposition where maybe you're not expected to win and it's a challenge. I quite like the big games, if you like. And then there's the other phrase that pressure is a privilege. And I think that gets thrown around a lot, but at the same time it is, you've earned the right to even have that pressure in the first place, so you almost owe yourself the ability to go and perform and turn up and actually deliver when it counts.
So you see it as kind of like an opportunity to show what you've got.
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll probably talk about it later, but in terms of like preparing for those moments, I think once you're prepared and you know what's coming and you know that you've done your preparation, that challenge is kind of, I find that more relaxing to just know that I've got a challenge, I have to deliver at this point. And yeah, it kind of motivates you, I suppose, or keeps you focused. I think for me, it's probably more of a focus thing, because you know that if you slip up, it could cost you.
Yeah. And would you say you've always felt that way towards pressure? Because that's quite a positive way to think about pressure. Like, I suppose not every athlete may think the same. Yeah,
I think the minute pressure starts becoming a negative thing, it can be quite difficult to navigate in terms of performing well. Obviously, you're like trying to control your arousal levels and your performance and your execution of things. And if you're not in a positive frame of mind in terms of dealing with that pressure, it can be quite difficult to perform properly. But for me, I know throughout my career, like I've always done well in big games. I think I have. Someone's probably listening thinking that's a lie. I feel like I've always been relaxed going into big games. And I think for me that's important. Like it tells me that I can deal with it. And then it's just a case of me going out and delivering. And I enjoy that sort of element of pressure.
And where do you think that stemmed from? I mean, that might be from a person, or do you think it's just stemmed from within, or an experience? Like,
do you know, I don't know. I can't think of a specific person. I remember a coach at England would always say that the pressure is a privilege.
Yeah.
And she'd say, what was it now? Fire in the belly, ice in the mind, so that you're hungry and determined for it, but you still got to be cool and collected mentally. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably hits the nail on the head. It's like your desire and that to go and win is absolutely there, but you've got to be able to control the emotional side of it to allow yourself to perform.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I learned pretty early on, because if you get yourself into a state where you're almost panicking, you just cannot expect anyone to perform well in that state. If they do, it's got to be a fluke, right? Because you're just not thinking and, controlling your body well and blah, blah, blah. So I think the more calm you can be, whether it's a high pressure environment or low pressure, the better you're going to perform.
So it's being calm, but also still wanting it and still having that desire to do well.
Yeah.
How would you say, in terms of, you talked about controlling your emotions and things, like, has someone helped you develop that, or is that something, like, what do you do to help yourself?
I think, like, various coaches have different sort of philosophies or ways of helping individual players. So I've probably learned bits and pieces throughout my time playing and having worked with tons of different people. But I think the biggest thing for me is trying to figure out how to be calm. So I can recognise that I need to be calm and relaxed. It's now just figuring out how do I get myself in that state. Sometimes it's easier than other things. Sometimes it just comes to you naturally. Like if it's a big game, you'd expect to be a bit more nervous and things, but for some reason I feel a lot more calm. And I think as I've played big in a lot of bigger games throughout my career, the biggest thing that underpins it for me is, has my preparation been good?
Yeah.
So if I'm prepared, I know everything about the opposition that I need to, I feel like I've had a good training week, I feel good physically, mentally, and I know what I need to deliver on a weekend. By the time that whistle blows, or by the time it gets to the morning of that match, to be honest, I'm relaxed and I'm ready for it, and I don't really feel that pressure because I've already handled it in the week.
It's like control the controllables.
Yeah,
part of the rest.
One of my other managers would definitely say that. That is literally the phrase. I think it was my time during Bristol City. It was control the controllables, and it just sits in my head, and I'm like, okay, right, control the controllables. It's true though.
Yeah, preparation's a theme that comes up time and again on these podcasts. So I'll probably pick your brains a bit more on that in a moment. Mm-hmm. You mentioned a lot of these phrases, like fire in the belly, ice in the mind, is from coaches.
Yeah. You've
played for your country, you've played for some real top teams. Has there also been any input from sports psychologists in any of the teams that you've worked with?
Not so much on an individual basis, or or not so much performance-wise either, like performance psychology. This is only things that I've sort of picked up through maybe studying, like my degree had touched on a little bit of sports psych, but not so much really working in terms of like within the football environment. It's not really something that I've been exposed to, I suppose.
Okay. Do you think in the women's game there's probably a bit more of a need for some regular psych involvement to aid performance, like there probably is in the men's game, for instance? I mean, we're working with FC Porto at the moment, and in their academy they have one psych per age group, which I think, not speaking out of turn, but it's probably unheard of really in this country. So is it something that's required more in the women's game, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. I think that sort of off-pitch development can definitely be improved in the women's game, and in terms of performance psychology, absolutely. I think it's one of those things, like in the women's game, it's growing at such a rate that you're trying to improve the absolute essentials first. So it's probably a little bit further down the order in terms of priority. That's probably where the game's at, and I think that's fair to say. Yeah. But in terms of would there be a need for it? Yeah, 100%. Like you're looking at how can you get the 1% and get the extra bit of help that you can. The psychological side of playing and the mental side of playing is a huge element of it. So why would you not train it to the same extent that you train physically on a pitch? You know, I think it's massively important. It probably gets overlooked. But the other thing I think with it is performance psych or psychological intervention, if you like, is often seen as you're fixing a problem. But I don't think it has to be a problem to be. You don't have to fix something. You can try and enhance something that you're good at, or you know, develop in an area to develop your performance. Like you don't always have to be working on something negative.
Yeah, there's two really interesting things for me that you've said there. I mean, first of all, sometimes people have this expectation that sports psychs will go in, they'll work with a team or work with a player and change their performance by 50%, 100%. But even if it's by 1%, 2%, 5%, that still can be really valuable for a player.
Yeah. So
that's something that stood out from your answer there. The other thing that I wanted to say has just escaped my mind, actually. So I'll move on to my next question about preparation. You said already about the importance of preparing well. So you talked about training well, eating well, sleeping well. But take us to the 24 hours before a game. So what kind of things do you do to put yourself in the best place to play in those 24 hours before a Sunday match?
I think one element of it is actually switching off. So your Saturday, I know some of the girls in part-time teams will be working, but whether I'm just wandering around the shops or going to spend some time with family to just not think about football. But then aside from that, I guess just looking over clips of opposition. Now, as a fullback, it's very much a 1v1 game at points where you're up against your winger, and I like to know, you know, what foot are they, like what do they like to do? Are they quite skillful? Are they quick? Things like that. Just so I feel mentally prepared for what I'm up against. And then I suppose knowing that you've done your work in the week, so you might need to go over that in your head, like visualise it a little bit. I think, you know, knowing what your plan is as a team on the weekend helps you to be able to visualise what the game's going to look like. That's something that I found quite helpful, I think, for me personally anyway.
Brilliant. And it's just come back into my head. The other point that I wanted to make about your answer a minute ago. You said something along the lines of, a site doesn't have to come in and fix a problem sometimes. We've literally been having this conversation in the office at staffs about how about trying to maximise the strengths that we've already got and make players aware that you already have this strength. Sometimes they don't realise it. So that's come back into my mind, and I just wanted to underline that really.
Yeah.
I want to dig a bit deeper into the visualisation.
Yeah.
It's a big area for us in our work. So what kind of things are you visualising? So you're a right back, you're up against a left winger usually. What kind of things do you visualise to help you get ready to play well?
Just things like, it would depend, I suppose, on some of the footage I might have seen, but generally if you're in a 1v1, it's like getting your accel, decel to that player right. Are you slowing down? Like I'm always visualising it, but I don't know what the word is for visualising, but feeling like a physical sensation. Sounds really weird, but like, what does it look like for me to be slowing down at the right moment? What does it look like for me to be able to turn and accelerate at the right time so I can get across the player? Like things like that. I suppose it's quite in depth, but it's relevant to specific scenarios. So it might be like, I think I mentioned before, and myself and Katie were chatting about the technical element when I was younger was quite a big thing for me in terms of being able to control the ball and pass it properly. Just visualising what does that look like when the ball comes in, actually seeing it be controlled by the instep of my foot and then seeing me complete a pass. I guess you're just like visualising positive outcomes, whether it's in possession or out of possession, which I think just, I don't know, you've almost just seen yourself doing it well, so then you kind of hope that when you go into a game it's going to turn out that way.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that gives you a greater sense of control, confidence going into a game, just to push you a little bit further on it, because I think this is really useful for maybe students or the players that are listening. When you're doing this visualisation, where are you doing it? Is it on the team bus? Is it in the car? Is it at home? Do you have your eyes shut? Can I ask for a bit more on that?
Yeah, I'm just laughing because like my match day prep, like I like to, when you get to the ground or when you're walking out on the pitch before, if I can, go and sort of stand in the area of the pitch that I'm going to be playing in. Like if I'm playing right back, I'll be just to the side of the 18-yard box. That's kind of the area. And it sounds weird because I know people have been like probably looking at me thinking, what is she doing? I've got my headphones in, I'm just in my own little like world for a minute, and I'm just like seeing the ball being played out to me, I'm positive touch forward, playing a pass. Or it might be like I'm walking up as if I'm pressing somebody. So it's like in slow-mo, like you know, you do walkthroughs. And then I'm kind of dropping off, like almost just visualising and like reenacting what is to come, I suppose. And I don't even know where that came from. I just sort of found it a bit comforting to just sort of stand on the pitch and take a minute. And then as I was doing that, more started coming to me. Like it could even be the night before a game. I'm just sort of thinking about the pictures that I might see. And again, I think it helps when you know what to expect on the weekend. Like if you know maybe you're playing a different position or who's playing and blah, blah, blah. Once you kind of know that, it helps with that sort of preparation and being able to visualise what you're going to expect on the weekend.
Yeah, adds more realism, more detail.
Yeah.
So that it benefits you more.
Yeah, that's it. You're like, it's just visualising things being executed properly or, you know, accurately, I suppose.
Yeah. So it seems that you've almost fallen into this like by accident. It's not like anyone's ever sat down with you and said, right, before your game at the weekend, go and stand on the pitch, go and stand in the right back area and visualise yourself.
No one's ever told me to do that. I don't know where it came from. But yeah, I think visualisation is something that, like I said, I touched on psychology at some points, things like that, or dealing with like stress or performance anxiety. Like I kind of touched on a bit of it academically, and you always kind of think, how can that apply to what I'm doing? So yeah, I guess it's something I've just sort of fallen into and picked up as I've gone along.
Yeah, I mean, some really valuable takeaways there for people listening. And another thing I want to pick your brains on is mistakes are inevitable in a game. Nobody's going to ever have 100% pass completion.
Yeah.
You're going to lose some of your jewels. How do you react in the face of an inevitable mistake? And is your reaction different dependent upon how serious that mistake is? So based on giving the ball away in the final third when you're attacking, compared with not tracking your left winger and then end up scoring at the far post?
Yeah, the reaction's probably the same. I think, like, you know when you've messed up, whether it's intentional, whether it's a genuine mistake, like, well, not intentional, but I mean, like, a specific skill. But yeah, I think just to take a minute, like a split second, to just recompose yourself and just be like, do you know what, it's done, it's gone. Like, for me personally, I probably wouldn't need someone screaming down my neck that I've messed it up as well, because I can promise you now I already know. And yeah, that for me is just, how can I get that split second to just go, right, that was rubbish. How do I recompose and go again? Because ultimately I can't change it. It's just happened. So I need to make sure that my next action is positive and executed well, whether that's, again, in possession or 1v1. Even if it's something as big as giving a penalty away or a foul or something in a dangerous area, like, just relax. Because otherwise, if you get into a state where you're worrying about it and you're stressed out about it, your next action probably isn't going to be great either. So how can I get that in and out of my head as quickly as possible and just move on?
Yeah, and I want to ask you, is that a skill, that ability to say, it's done, move on, is that something that you've got better at over the years? Or do you think, like, right from when you started playing back in Berkshire, you know, were you good at doing that then?
No, absolutely not. It was a real problem. I think, like, I mentioned that technical probably wasn't, I didn't feel it was my strongest point, and it got highlighted a couple of times, and it almost got highlighted too much, to the point where I would make a mistake, it would be a technical based error, and it would just sit on my mind. And of course the ball would come to me again, and I'm panicking that much about not doing it again that I'd ended up doing it again. And it almost became a bit like subconscious. And I think from the sort of moment where it got addressed and this is an area that you need to work on, Ellie, like go and develop it, I did it religiously for a lot, but it was just too focused. And I think when a coach eventually told me, it must have been about 6 months later, just relax, like forget about it. We're not even going to talk about it anymore. We're not even going to address that that's an area of weakness. Like just forget about it. And all of a sudden you're more relaxed and I was okay. And I think if you're overthinking it in a game or overthinking a mistake you've just made, it's just not going to end well. So like that was a big learning curve. I must have been about 18, 19. How can I get over mistakes quickly? And I always just try and block it out straight away. Like I remember being on camp with Ellie Wilson at an under 19s camp, and she came out with something that she does, and I don't know if she still does it, but she'd pick up a piece of grass off the turf and just throw it away. And that was almost like her physically and like in her head going, I've made a mistake, it's gone now. And I think that's something that I kind of like, I listened to and I thought, actually, I might try that. Don't get me wrong, I don't do it every time I make a mistake, but like mentally that is kind of like the approach I have, I suppose. Sometimes I do physically rip a piece of grass, so you'll see me and I'll be like, she's trying to sort something out there, but yeah.
Okay, and it is important to review mistakes because that's how we learn. And you said, and I completely agree, you don't need to be told in the moment you've messed up. How is that going to help you there and then? But when is the right time to try and review a mistake for you? Is it the night after the game? Is it later on in the week? What works best for you?
Probably after the game. I think technical errors in a game, like for me personally, I already know that I've made the mistake, so I probably don't need to be told. Others might, everyone's different, they respond differently. But I like to review games and my own individual performance as soon as possible after the game. So once I've like eaten, showered, chill out a bit, I want to watch the footage. And a lot of the time I've realised as well, like since playing, is sometimes it feels horrendous. Like I feel like I've had a really bad game and I watch it back and it's actually nowhere near as bad as I thought. It might not be great, but it was not the end of the world. And then other times I've watched things back and it's okay. Like I can see what I need to improve, but I think it almost just gives a sense of like realism to the situation, because a lot of time there's a lot of emotion involved in the game and it can be very easy to get wrapped up in it. So once you just watch it, then you can kind of clear it and then go again Tuesday.
So it helps you get it out your system by watching it quite soon afterwards.
Yeah, it stresses me out if I can't watch it, to be honest. Yeah, like I'm always asking analysis, like, can we have the game on a Sunday? Like, and then I can watch it and go to bed at whatever time that is. But at least it's done then, and then I can start Monday, Tuesday and just sort of think, might need to go over certain elements of it again, that's fine, and how we can improve. But I'm not dwelling on it. I think that's the important thing.
Yeah, we've had guests on as well that have said the opposite actually to you, and I guess it just shows that everybody is different, everybody's got different preferences.
Yeah.
So Matt Smith told us that it's better for him if he reviews his performance a few days later, because that allows him to feel less like he's reviewing his own performance. It's like someone else is reviewing it through his eyes.
Yeah.
So I guess like a takeaway is that if you don't agree with Ellie's approach, then that's okay, because everybody has different things that work well for them.
Definitely, yeah. I think the other thing is like on the Tuesday back at training, I've got the opportunity to go through your individual clips with a coach, with a staff member, which can be quite good to get someone else's perspective on it as well. Like, is there things you could have done differently, or how did you feel, blah, blah, blah. And like you said, that different perspective can be quite useful, I think.
Yeah, and I suppose in this correcting of mistakes, are you finding like through your career that most coaches are actually coming from a place of wanting to help you improve rather than punitively trying to say, you did this wrong, you're a bad player? Is that the general feeling?
Yeah, 100%. Like if you've made a mistake and coaches are getting on your back about it, at the end of the day, everyone wants to win. Like your coach wants to win just as much as the players want to win. Yeah. Maybe more in some cases. So if there's like a reaction to someone making a mistake, it's only because they want to win and want to do better and want to improve you as well. So I think that's probably been something I've learned like in recent years playing, is not to not take it negatively. Like I didn't take it negatively, but you can always like have a negative reaction. Yeah. If I can just go, do you know what? They want to win, I want to win. We're all trying to achieve the same thing, like just relax, then I can kind of take it a little bit easier.
Yeah. So it's not like it's a personal criticism, but
exactly, yeah.
It's a chance to objectively assess.
Yeah.
This is what you did and this is how you can move forward. Mm-hmm. And it would be remiss of me not to think about performing under pressure more as a team environment. Often in psychology we can be guilty. I'm guilty of this, of focusing on the individual rather than the team.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm a big Wolves fan. I've been to many Wolves women games, and I really get the sense that you are a close-knit group.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you react when a teammate makes a mistake or visibly, in your view, has like nerves before a game? What kind of things are you doing to help your teammates on the psychological side?
I think just for the first part, we are a close group. I think like we all get on very well, and that helps with that sort of thing, because straight away you're already on a level where you can address good and bad things together, and it be taken well, which is really a good side of it. But in terms of like helping each other, I think you kind of learn how people respond to certain things. So there might be somebody that maybe needs a bit of a kick, or like, oh, come on, like you're better than that. And that might work for them. But there also might be other players in the group that not necessarily need an arm round, but just, oh, come on, go again, don't worry, like make sure your next one's good, that sort of response. So it's just about like tailoring your response, I think. And as you play together for longer and you train more together, you kind of learn what people do and don't like. And I think it's important to like even just tell each other, because why should it be a guessing game? Like you go back to the need to have sports psychology. If we all sit in a room and go, right, how do people want to be addressed when they make a mistake or something? If you just know that, it's not like there's a right or wrong way. It's just we're all trying to get the best out of each other. Like for me, I've already mentioned, if I'm being screamed at, it's probably not going to get the best response, like as much as I'll try. Like, whereas some people may not even need to be told. Like, I can think of people in the team where people make a mistake, and do you even need to address that they need to do better than that? Probably not, because they'll already know. So just leave it and go again.
Yeah. And do you have any particular approaches that you take with younger players that are just coming through, perhaps they're about to make their debut for Wolves Women? Do you go out of your way to do anything special for that kind of player? Or
I think just like helping people relax, really, like just asking them, like, how you feeling, like, you up for it, you excited? Like, it should be, especially when you're a younger player making your debut, it should be about like the enjoyment and the excitement part of it. Like, that's a big moment, you know, like you're going to be nervous, but the biggest thing you probably say is like, just don't worry, just go out there and relax. Like, if you make a mistake, the players or the more experienced players, whatever, are not going to be on your case, like, because you're at a different part in your career, you know, you just want to enjoy it. So just making sure they're relaxed, and if anything, probably more encouragement than anything else, really. Yeah,
I think that's very kind of sensible approach. It's perhaps reminding them about, you know, you started playing football for the love of the game when you were 6, 7, 8 years old. That's why you're here now.
Yeah.
I think it's really powerful sometimes to remind players of that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Obviously you want to win, but
yeah, it's just remembering like why you're there, and you're there and you're like, you know, you're wearing the badge and you've worked hard to get there, like worked hard to be starting or be coming on or whatever it is. And I think sometimes like the game it's a serious game, obviously there's a lot at stake and you want to win, but you've got to enjoy it as well. That's the most important part, if anything.
Yeah, and just coming back to this close-knit group that you've got at Wolves Women, that hasn't happened by accident. So Dan McNamara, the head coach, and his team, I'm just interested to know what kind of things that they do to help put the group in the best place to perform well. What kind of strategies do they employ?
I think like when he said about the group being close-knit, that's obviously something that's a big thing for Wolves Women, and like Macca plays a big part in that, and the coach and staff. Like, obviously we have players coming in and players going out, but we all want to make sure that we're getting on with each other and you've got good people around the environment. So that's a big thing in terms of like the team atmosphere. And then just pride ourselves on hard work as a collective, and just make sure everyone's putting 100% in. Like, Macca's very passionate, wants to win, probably see that on the touchline, and I think that filters through to the girls as well. Well, it definitely does, and everyone's on the same page. So I think from that point of view, when you know you're all working towards the same common goal, that can be quite powerful. And it's very much like, likes to remind us, like, you're playing for the badge. There's a lot of players that would want to play for Wolves, and we're here with the opportunity and the badge on our shirt to be able to do that. So go out and do it justice and make yourself and your teammates proud, and the city as well, to extend on that. So I think that's quite a nice way of like summing it up, really, and it sits quite nicely with me.
Moving a little bit away from football, but sticking with football as well. You've mentioned like you've done a master's and you've got a job.
Yeah.
So I just wondered, like, what's kind of you've got to perform under pressure in them as well. I'm going to guess, you know. especially during your masters, maybe had a Viva, etc. Is there transferable skills from what you've learned in them areas into football? And I suppose it works the other way as well?
Yeah, I think so. There's probably loads, just trying to think of some off the top of my head. Like prioritising like when things are important, I think is probably a big one that's come out of like from me studying and playing. Like what's the priority? What do I need to put my energy and my effort into at this moment in time? Is it just relaxing so that I'm more refreshed and ready to go again? Our S&C coach will hear that and he'll be like, yep, recovery, so that you can go again better. But in terms of studying, like if you're not in the right sort of frame of mind or you're a bit tired or whatever, there's no point sitting and grinding it out. Just wait until you're in the zone. Like I often find that I get in the zone like late at night and then I'll just be so productive. I think the same thing kind of applies to playing. But yeah, other than that, it's just like time management and how you manage your workload, I think is probably the biggest things I've taken away from doing both.
Okay, yeah. I suppose that'll help you moving forward, when you'll play at the bigger games and the bigger clubs as well. I suppose another question is in terms of, you're a dual career athlete. How would you say that's helped your game?
I think it just gives you opportunities outside of the game, things to focus on when you're away from football, things to sort of take your mind away from the performance side of things or the stress, like not stress of performing, but you can get quite immersed in it, and it's quite good and healthy, I think, to have alternative things to do and occupy your mind with. So yeah, like when you're playing, as long as you're not working as well, you often have quite a lot of time outside of the game. And I think it's really important that people use that time and try and like broaden the knowledge or get qualifications or whatever it is to just give them something else to focus on.
I suppose, like as you said, it like takes your mind off, especially if you've not had a good game or something. Like you can focus your mind on something else. But the same vice versa, I guess. If you've had a bad day at work, football must be great as well.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably the biggest. It's the big benefit of playing and working or playing and studying. Yeah. You might not play well on a Sunday. You think, I can't be bothered to go to work on a Monday, or can't bother, I need to do this assignment, whatever. Yeah. But for me, once I'm there or once I'm like immersed in it, I'm not thinking about football during that time because I'm thinking about my work or my studying or whatever it is, and having a task or something written that you can just get on with is kind of quite a nice distraction. And then you revisit the football side when it's time to switch your mind back into athlete mode, if you like.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think one of our final questions would be, what advice would you give your younger self?
I would definitely say just relax and enjoy it. Like I mentioned, I think earlier in the podcast, that technical and stuff was an area that really stressed me out at one point, and I think getting wrapped up in mistakes not cost me, but it stressed me out a lot of the time. And I think had I been able to just switch into a mindset where it's done, forget it, it's gone, move on quicker than I was able to at that time, probably would have progressed better and been a bit more at ease with things. And I think I'm a lot more able to do that now. So if I do make a mistake in a game, it doesn't bother me for the rest of the match, which is obviously important. So yeah, that'd probably be the biggest thing. And I'd still say to myself now and to anyone else playing, just enjoy it, because that's the biggest part. It's a game at the end of the day. So you want to be having fun while you're playing.
Well, as you said earlier about, that's the point where you're there. You started it because you had a passion about it and you enjoyed it.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
That's what keeps you going when you have a bad game, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, the big games are like a privilege, and you want to play in the big games, and it shouldn't be something that stresses you out. Like you always want to try and get to the top of your game, so you want to enjoy while you're doing it and sort of enjoy that journey. As cliche as that sounds, that is really important, because you're going to have to retire at some point, so you got to enjoy it while you're playing.
Yeah, it's almost like what we use in our work often is gratitude. It can really help people appreciate what they've got now, rather than focusing on what they haven't got, keeping them in the moment rather than dwelling on the past or worrying too much about the future. So it sounds like that's a key part of your mentality to playing well.
Yeah, I think it's important because, like I say, it can be stressful at times, like on and off the pitch, and the key thing is that you are enjoying it. You can't enjoy it if you start getting wrapped up in it in a negative way. And football is crazy. Like it can be up and down, literally week to week, day to day. I remember thinking, actually, as I was driving here, don't get too high with the highs or too low with the lows. And I'm not going to say I'm the best at it, but it's something that I try to be. And I think it's important because it is such an up and down game, and it can be very emotionally driven. So you just got to enjoy what you can.
Yeah, so many valuable things I think, to highlight and unpick, but I'm going to try to pick out 3 things that have stood out for me.
Okay.
Katie, if you want to do the same, and then we'll ask you again if there's anything that you'd like to add or just push further. So a phrase that stuck out for me in today's podcast was fire in the belly, ice in the mind. I love the combination of that. And I think, like, if you're a football fan, to hear that your players in your team want to have that fire to do well, first of all, that's great. But equally, you don't want fire in the belly and fire in the mind necessarily.
Yeah.
So I think the contrast between those two and the way that you could kind of almost see that is a really helpful takeaway.